Hey there, Wolfpack fans. It's me again, Kenton Gibbs, bringing you another episode of Locked On Wolfpack. Today, we're going to be getting into the offensive line and questions that I have for them. And I need a little assistance, okay? I need a little assistance because let's just be honest. While camp is coming to an end, while this is the last week of no official football where the records are going to count for the rest of the year, I needed some help. I needed some backup. So I got none other than my main man, Alec Sawyer, in the building. How you doing, Alec?
I am doing well.
All righty. Well, that's great to hear. I believe that you were backstage. You heard what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the big guys because you and I are both big guys. We different types of big, different levels of big. But me and you are both big guys, so I think we can get into talking about some buffet busters today, and we'll be all right. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great to me. Sounds great.
All righty. Well, Wolfpack Nation, stick with us while we go over all this and more on today's episode of Locked On Wolfpack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, Alec, last time we saw each other was at ACC Media Days, and I feel like that was the beginning of NC State's hype train really picking up. Like, that was the beginning of, things like this is the highest incoming ranking that NC State has ever had, except for, what was it, one time other than this? And I believe it was the exact same rating or ranking at 13?
Yeah, it's 13. It was tied 2000. No, just kidding. It was in the 70s at some point. They were 13. And then they were 15, 16 in 2003. So, yeah, it's literally as high as they've ever been ranked preseason.
Exactly. Expectations are literally as high as they've ever been in Raleigh. And we, of course, saw Devin Leary be named the ACC Preseason Player of the Year. And, of course, we see different things happening and shaking out around the conference to where there are, some star guys who are going to miss some time or be out and all that good stuff, which is unfortunate for those teams, but it makes it seem more and more like this could actually be happening. And we have not taken a single snap. We have not seen not nary a kickoff yet. What do you think it means to see NC State come into this year ranked so highly? Again, the highest in program history, of course, a tie, but still the highest that we've seen in program history. Obviously, the highest that you and I have ever seen. What does this mean for the program, and what do you think this is in terms of like, is this they're rated properly, they're overrated, a little underrated? Where would you go there?
Yeah, no, it's huge for NC State. I mean, it's like Dave Doran's built a good thing here, and you've kind of had your two little windows with him where, in 17, 16, they were good, but maybe didn't quite peak as high as this in terms of hype. Now this time you obviously have the COVID year, which brings some guys back, and that I think is a little bit of a perfect storm for NC State with some of these guys that certainly wouldn't be here still without that. Isaiah Moore and injuries helping there or hurting there too. But it's huge for NC State. I mean, it's a massive deal for them to be 13, for them to be in the national conversation. And in terms of the rating, like, listen, I think it's just about right. If I were to fill out a top 25 right now, I think I would maybe even have NC State a spot or two higher. I think they're, in terms of returning talent and what they could be, maybe even top 10 good. But I think 13 makes a lot of sense for NC State. And you saw that it's coaches and APs, so clearly there's a consensus there.
Absolutely. And what goes along with that is, we've talked ad nauseum about what Devin Leary is and how great people expect him to be. Let me ask you this question, because this was posed to me the other day, and it was something that I hadn't even considered. Is there another level of play for Devin Leary to reach? Is there another level from last year to where you could say, hey, there's a world where he turns into a whole nother guy for the good in terms of what he was from last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think he just has continued to get better. That's the thing with him is last year was the first year we'd really gotten to see him for a full season. He had the injury the year before and just, had played a little bit the season before that, but that team was so bad and he played at the end of the year that last year was the first time we got to see Devin Leary be the starting quarterback for the season from the beginning of the year through the end of the year. And he was phenomenal. And he has the skills and he does the things that make you watch him and be like, he can even reach another level because he doesn't throw picks. I mean, 5 interceptions last year, a couple of those in like Hail Mary situations at the end of halves too. He's got an electric arm, really good arm strength. He's just a really smart quarterback. I think there's another level for him. I think when you look at the receiving core that he has this year, you're going to miss Emeka Emezi, but there's also some young guys that we've been hearing some really, really good things about that are maybe even different types of weapons. A couple guys that are really fast, Julian Gray, Anthony Smith, that I don't think necessarily NC State had a reliable, just crazy game-breaking speed guy last year. So I think he certainly can reach even another level. Will the pure numbers be as high as they were last year with the touchdowns? I mean, maybe not. That's a school record. But in terms of his play, there's no reason to not believe that he'll keep getting better.
I know that Devin Leary's father listens to this podcast, so I hope I don't offend you, Mr. Leary. I hope I'm not offending you right now, but the reality is I do think that there's another level, but I think that level is that's almost guaranteed Heisman territory. Like if he was to take a step forward from last year, if he replicated last year, I think he'll be first team All ACC. I think he may get a spot in New York. I think that all the good things are. If he takes a step forward from what we saw the last year, and like you said, it's very possible. I have talked ad nauseum. Anthony Smith is a guy that I remember watching that special teams play where his helmet came off, and he just kept playing and kept going. Now, obviously, that negatively impacted NC State because the reality is he recovered a fumble, I believe, and it's illegal to participate once your helmet comes off. But that moment right there showed me that this is more than just a fast guy. This is somebody who deeply, deeply cares about winning. And that's not something that you see all the time out of receivers. And so a guy like him, yes, he is not Emeka Emezi, but he's different from Emeka Emezi. He is an entirely different beast. And another guy that I've talked about a lot, if Devin Carter cleans up the drop problems, I honestly and truly, if I'm going pound for pound, who would I rather have, right? If you tell me you get Emeka Emezi back or you get Devin Carter, and he's going to give you at max 2 drops, and neither one will be crucial. That's not even hard. That's not even hard for me. Devin Carter is a big body guy who can run. He can high point the ball. He's tough to bring down after the catch, and he is so fast for his size. You don't imagine him closing ground as quickly as he does with the ball in his hands, but the reality is he's a long strider. When those legs get to turning and pumping, he's going to clear up some ground. And we haven't even mentioned the most reliable weapon, which is Thayer Thomas. The guy that we know. That's the proven commodity that we know Thayer's limitations, but we know what he can do as well. We know that he will always find a way to get open. We know that while we don't talk about him in the same speed burner conversation as maybe a Keon Lassane, or maybe a Porter Rooks, as maybe a Anthony Smith, we still know, we saw in the Boston College game, he's got plenty of wheels. He's got plenty of wheels. So I think that this is a situation where Devin does have, it's there. It's possible. But it's going to be a tough ask to ask him to go to another level. And again, if he goes to that next level, you can book it right now. Book it right now. NC State's going to Charlotte, and he's going to New York. If he hits another level, I don't think that there's a world where those two things don't happen. What say you?
Yeah, no, I agree. And listen, I kind of touch on this too. Statistically, maybe he drops off a little bit because 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, like that. That's a pretty good season. So there could be a statistical drop off, even if his play is still consistently great and he's taking another level. If he plays like he did last year, though, like you said, and NC State as a team is what we expect them to be, do I think Devin Leary is going to go to New York and be a Heisman finalist? Probably not. Is it possible? Certainly. I mean, that's kind of where I sit on that. I don't think it's crazy to at least talk about it if he were to continue to improve and take that step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's one of the odds on, he's one of the dark horses, but he's still got some pretty good odds to win it all and take the Heisman home. So, if you're a bettor, go ahead and get your money right there. And by the way, for the bettors, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live game, in-game betting to scores and podcasts. They have you covered. BetOnline, where the game starts. So now we got to get into the big fellas. You know what I mean? We got to get into. I got the stove warming up right now because I'm about to make myself some lunch here. So we got to get into the big fellas in this offensive line that, you know, people are looking at the loss of Big Ick and saying that he was not just the first lineman drafted; he was the first offensive player drafted. And when you see what he's doing in the preseason, everybody said that his weakness was the 45 vertical set. That was going to be the problem. He's looked phenomenal in that. He's looked phenomenal in the thing that everybody said was probably what he was worst at against the NFL competition, the highest competition that you can name. So, of course, losing him is going to be a blow. But with that being said, who steps in at that left tackle position, and how good do you feel about NC State's offensive line overall?
Yeah, I feel good about NC State's offensive line. You lose Ike Ekwonu, that's a huge loss. Probably the best player on your team last year. I get that. This is not a weakness of this team because everyone else is back and you have some really good pieces. At left tackle, pretty much known at this point that Anthony Belton's going to be the starter there. Came in last year, was a transfer from a junior college prior to last season. He is massive. We talked to him a couple weeks ago. He is a just unbelievably large human being. Coach Thunder's nicknamed him Escalade because I think his quote was, he said, "I'm big and smooth like an Escalade." People are excited about him. That everyone that we've talked to, everyone that, you know, has talked about that position is really excited about what he can do. Again, he's huge. He had success in the junior college level. He seems to be a guy that is going to step up into that position. Is he going to be Ike Ekwonu? Of course he's not going to be. But I think he could be really, really good at that left tackle spot, especially when you look at the rest of the offensive line and you have everyone else returning and a lot of talent.
Let me tell you something. If you're going to describe my left tackle as smooth, I like it. That's what I need. That's what I need, that kick step to be elite. I need the things that Big Ick did extremely well are not things that you typically think of when you think of left tackles, right? You don't think of a mauler. You don't think of somebody that's vicious. You think of a guy who's smooth in and out of movement, who's smooth in picking up games, and who has the movement ability to do some different things in terms of and in the new era and new game that we live in where everything's spread out. You're going to have to block in space as a tackle in ways that we didn't see before. Like there are more wide receiver tunnel screens now than ever, which means you're going to have to go get yourself a corner every now and then, big guy. And if you don't got dancer feet, it may not go well for you. So it's great to hear that about Belton. But I want to touch on something you said there. Everybody else being right. You get a guy who was named to the freak list last year in McMahon. You get a guy who is consensus all conference. You know, some even mention him in All-American in the center conversation, and Grant Gibson. You get Chandler Zavala back, who I think that is a huge, monumentous moment for NC State to get him back as well. And Bryson Speeds has, you know, he's gotten better every year. I think that it's safe to say, I think we can comfortably say that he's gotten more and more comfortable at that right tackle position as time has gone on. And so with that being said, with all that is coming back in terms of the experience and the talent, what do you think the ceiling is for this run game? Because, I mean, yes, of course, protecting Devin Leary is going to be an important part of this thing. Absolutely. However, the ability to open up holes, especially with a very unproven backfield, outside of Jordan Houston, I don't think anybody's pitched a drop in terms of production out of our running backs. So how do you think these guys gel together in the running game? And do you think that we are a better team at running the ball than we were last year, despite losing two of the better backs in the conference?
Yeah, it's tough to say if they're going to be better or not because obviously Icky was run block extraordinaire too. When you look at the offensive line, though, if you can stay healthy there, I think you have high hopes because, like, obviously Chandler Zavala you get back, but you really didn't have him last year. He got hurt, but third, fourth week of the season,
right? And
so you get him back. You get these guys with more experience that have played together. You have two captains on the offensive line. Bryson Speeds named the captain, of course, with Grant Gibson as well. So I think there's room for them to be really good in the run game. You lost a ton at running back. You don't have experience there. Jordan Houston played a lot in 2019, but hasn't really played a ton as a running back since then. There's a couple other guys that are exciting, and Delbert Mims, Demi Suma, that people are excited about that I'm sure are going to have seasons and they're going to produce. Is the running game better? I don't know, because you do have that inexperience, but I think it could be as good, if not better. Listen, the run game last year wasn't great in the back half of the season. Part of that was Devin Leary, getting hot, and the pass game being really the main focus. But I think the running game has room to be good, and it starts with that offensive line, because you do have just a ton of experience. You also have some depth, some guys like Tim McKay, Derek Eason behind those starters that have played and have started games. So there's a lot of experience on the offensive line. There's a lot of size, and there's some depth there too. So I think the run game could be good. I wouldn't be shocked if they come out of the gate hot, even with a guy like Jordan Houston, who we haven't seen as a true running back in a couple years.
I think that there's an interesting idea here in that losing Big Ick may possibly be good for the run game in terms of now the Tim Beck has to be more creative in the running game. Has to be more creative in the running game, as well as defenses. You can no longer key, Big Ick's over there. We're gonna have an extra guy in the box to his side, even if it's the short side of the field. It is very rare in college football because of how wide the hashes are. In college football, it's rare, and I'm gonna talk some X's and O's. So if you don't understand it, I'm gonna break this down for you as simply as I can, okay? An overhang is generally meant to help out with contain, because you don't want the end man on the line of scrimmage being responsible for if you're on the hash, you don't want the end man to the wide side of the field to have to take from where they're lined up to the sideline and contain. It's an incredibly hard task. And so naturally you bring down an overhang, an extra player to do that job to help contain. And you say, hey, defensive end, you have this gap. Overhang guy, you are the one responsible for making sure that everything gets funneled back inside. Now, with that being said, there were times where we were on the left hash, meaning that the left side of the offensive line was the short side of the field. That was the short side. And teams still brought an overhang down to the short side, and we still ran into the short side because it was there. And you assumed that it was all going to work out, even though mathematically it was not a good proposition. It just wasn't. So it's going to be much harder to key that now that you have an offensive line that, I mean, again, while you're losing a spectacular talent, is more balanced now. Is going to be more of a situation where if it's 4th and 1, you don't know where that ball is going to go. Last year, you knew, they're going to run it behind Mr. Kwanu over there. The Pancake King of Raleigh, that's who they're going to run it behind. Now, you have no clue. You have no idea where the ball could be going. So that's a potential caveat that we could see a little boost there in terms of the running game. And now we talked about the running game as far as this offensive line goes. In pass protection, right? This offensive line held up fairly well last season. There was not a ton of they didn't give up a ton of right-of-way sacks that I was just like, there's nothing the quarterback can do. As soon as he grabs the ball, there's pressure in his face. With that being said, how do you see this offensive line handling pass protection in this upcoming year? Which again, we know is going to be important. If Devin Leary is the heart and soul, and if D. Leary is to deliver, as the campaign says, he's going to have a clean pocket to do so. So how do you see this offensive line holding up in the pass game?
Yeah, it was good last year. State did not allow a ton of sacks, like you were saying, and certainly held up in pass protection. There's no reason to not expect that again. Like I said, Ike Ekwonu was good at everything on the college level, but it was his run blocking that I think really made him stand out. Belton comes in, and he's, again, this huge guy. He's listed at 6'6", 330, which is bigger than Ekwonu is. And then you have the other side of the line with, McMahon and Spies, who played together last year a lot, who are really experienced guys. Left side now, it's Belton and Zavala, who were two really big dudes who certainly have what it takes. Obviously, Grant Gibson is Grant Gibson. So there's no reason to believe that they're not going to be able to protect Devin Leary in the passing game as well as they did last year. I think when you look at this offensive line, and I'm just going to keep saying it over and over again, it's experienced and it's deep and it's big, and that's what you need from an offensive line.
And I'm going to say this. the conference as a whole, I don't think that they got much better or much worse in terms of like defensive coordinators. However, the team that everybody is picking to finish first, if not NC State, is Clemson. Clemson is losing one of the greatest defensive minds that the game of football has ever seen, and I don't use that. I don't use that lightly. I don't. Again, the triple A gap blitz that got a sack against NC State. That triple A gap blitz was a thing of beauty, and I wasn't supposed to enjoy that. I wasn't supposed to. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't supposed. But to bring in two linebackers to not only pepper the A gaps, but to bring a strong rush, to make the offensive, to read the how the offense is running their protection, to bring the double A gap blitz. One of them eats up the back. Another one of them eats up two of the inside offensive linemen, and then bring a safety on the delay behind it, right up the A gap as well. That's madness. It's madness. And so, addition by subtraction. Hey, best of luck to you at Oklahoma, baby. Hey, more power to you, Brent. We're happy for you. Don't come back. You know what I mean? Stay at Oklahoma. I'm sure y'all gonna whoop the wheels off the Big 12 until y'all got to go out to the SEC. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. So I think that this is a situation very seriously, though, where I don't think that this offensive line will have too many problems in having the type of season that they had last year. So this is, again, a great time to be an NC State fan. But at the end of the day, they still got to go out there and prove us right, right? Like on paper, this team is all the things. On Saturdays is where it matters, right? We've seen a lot of teams that have either come out of nowhere where everybody said, oh, this team is a 2-win team. Don't worry about it. They mess around and win 8. We've seen plenty of teams. We've seen it in the state.
I was going to say.
In the state, less than 12 months ago, we saw a team that was number 5? Number 5 or 6? They were
high.
They were
top 10 preseason.
They were a single digit. They were a single digit. And by the end of the season, they were fighting and scrapping and clawing for bowl eligibility. You understand me? So this is, again, what a team is supposed to be as opposed to what they are. Who knows? We got to check that out and see. But we'll be right back with a word from our sponsors, and we'll wrap this thing on up. And we're back. So I think all in all, this is honestly and truly, a lot of people are worried that this may get to this team's head, all the hype, all the love, and all that may get to this team's head and all that good stuff. But I think it's a net positive to have NC State in these conversations. From a national recruiting standpoint, from a local recruiting standpoint, and from the situation of this is not a team that, even though everybody is pretending that NC State is now like, you know, they've been spoken of as if they're indefatigable, there are still more people picking Clemson to win the conference than not. Even with Dabo saying, woe is us, and we're underdogs now, and nobody believes in us anymore, they were still picked by and large by the media at ACC Media Days. They still come into the season at number 4. Like, this is still very much so a team that I think if you have lost your hunger based on being ranked second, you might not deserve a conference championship. You don't deserve to be in that game. But what do you think? Is this hype a good thing, a net positive or net negative for this NC State team? And we'll wrap it up after.
No, it's a good thing. Like you said, it helps recruiting. It helps your national image. Those things are really important. Like for college football, like it just goes so far. So to be in the conversation is better than not being in the conversation. As far as the team goes, and listen, they're always going to be upfront, like with the media and stuff. Oh, we don't care. We don't pay attention to those things. Every team in the country says that. But this NC State team, with as experienced and as veteran as these guys are, you kind of believe it. Like, there's so much experience. These guys have been through it before. They've been around college football. I think they truly don't care where they're ranked. And the other thing about NC State is when you look at all those guys that came back, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they came back for a reason. They came back because they did not make the ACC championship game last year. They came back because they didn't have the opportunity to win 10 games. I think the hunger is there. It doesn't matter to this team where they're ranked or how much some people are falling in love with them in the preseason. I think it's a good thing because it helps your image. It helps your recruiting. You want to be a name brand. You want to be in the conversation. And then as far as the team goes, this is a team that's going to be hungry and certainly has a chip on their shoulder.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is a situation where, all the makings are there, and while everybody, or not everybody, while many people are pretending as if there is like a serious risk of being upset in week 1, I just want to say this. The chasm in talent between NC State and ECU at the moment is, again, if we're comparing to the boys in baby blue, it's a world of difference between the difference that we saw between Virginia Tech last year, if we look at the full season, scope of the season, and the boys in baby blue. It just was not. Those are two teams that they basically finished about the same record, everything was about even. And again, if you looked at that team objectively and said, well, where did they bring it back? Where did they lose? You saw that was not as everything that was going to be cracked up to be. But with NC State, again, it's a very different situation. This team is in a very different spot. And they're on the side of the conference that everybody knows is going to be a meat grinder every year until it disbands, or not until it disbands, but until it no longer exists. So, that's again, even when you're a top 15 team in the country, you're not the number 1 team on this side coming in. So that's definitely a thing that should keep this team hungry. Alec, tell the folks where they can find your work.
Yeah, it's Pack Pride, packpride.com, at Pack Pride on Twitter. I'm just at Alec Sawyer on Twitter. All very easy, straightforward.
Absolutely. Let me tell you something now. Alec is there. He is on it. He is anything Wolfpack, you name it. Alec is going to talk to you about it. And there's a reason why I have Alec in at least once a week during baseball season. I wish I could get him in more, but he got bills to pay. And unfortunately, we do this for the love and friendship of our camaraderie and the power of friendship. And I can't help him pay his bills right now. So I appreciate it for when he does come by. Wolfpack Nation, I also appreciate y'all for coming by. Y'all make this show what it is. Peace and love, y'all. And as always, go Pack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.